Good afternoon.
Principal James.
Glad to see everyone. Thank you.
Our history lesson on Black culture.
Oh, great. What do you all know about Greenwood? Anybody? What do you know about Greenwood?
Greenwood was a back in the day town, city, and it is very original.
Okay, very good.
So the town has been destroyed. The town has been destroyed, and they rebuilt it. So even though they didn't have money, they rebuilt it out of the things they had. And they were ashamed because they were black, which wasn't good. But then, they have this new great city and town, wealthy people.
Really? Very good. Anybody else? Good, good. Well, allow me to give you a little bit of history about Greenwood. After the Civil War, which ended in 1865, most of the all-black townships were located right here in Oklahoma. Oklahoma was not a state at that time. It was considered a territory. Actually, it was a Indian territory. One of the townships was Greenwood. Greenwood was actually founded roughly around 1906 by a gentleman named Mr. O.W. Gurley. You're going to meet Mr. O.W. Gurley a little bit later on here. He came to town from Arkansas back in 1889. Greenwood, at the time when he built it, it encompassed roughly 600 businesses, covered 36 square blocks, with a population of at least 15,000 African-American people. There were jewelry stores, churches, restaurants, 2 movie theaters, 15 doctors and lawyers. That's pretty tough, especially when you start talking about lawyers. My God, can you imagine 15 lawyers in one place? God help us. They had, Deep Greenwood had clothing stores, barber shops, funeral parlors, billiard hall, hotel bar, hairdressers, shoemakers, tailors, and nightclubs. It was a time when the entire state of Oklahoma had only 2 airports, yet in this one community, you had 6 pilots who had their own airplanes. You know how to fly?
No, gravity. We had gravity. So from gravity, we had 0 gravity, we would float. And when we float, we can't do our things that we usually do with gravity.
So we can fly there, can't we? It was a fascinating community. This is a picture of roughly what it looked like at one point in time back in those days. The Greenwood district grew into the most famous and prosperous black urban community in the entire United States. At that time, it was so popular. At that time that the great Mr. Booker T. Washington called it the Black Wall Street, including working class people. There were also middle class, upper class. Very, very great place to live at that time.
Principal James, thank you. Now you're going to learn about some of the historic people of Greenwood. The first person we're going to learn about is the founder of Greenwood, and that's O.W. Gurley. He talked about it. Around the start of the 20th century, O.W. Gurley, a wealthy black landowner from Arkansas, crossed the United States to participate in the Oklahoma Land Run of 1889. O.W. was a young entrepreneur and had just resigned from a presidential appointment under President Grover Cleveland. O.W. decided to strike out on his own, so in 1906, Gurley moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where he purchased 40 acres of land, which was only to be sold to black people, and this was unheard of at that time. Well, people began to buy the land, and O.W. named the street Greenwood Avenue, after his home in Greenwood, Mississippi. Among Gurley's first businesses was a rooming house, which was located on Dusty Trail near the railroad tracks. In addition to his rooming house, Gurley built 3 two-story buildings and 5 residences and bought an 80-acre farm in Rogers County. Gurley also founded what is today Vernon AME Church. Class, please welcome Mr. O.W. Gurley.
No waste time. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me this road would be easy. Oh, I come too far for him to leave me. I don't feel no waste time. Is anybody out there know what it's like to have a dream? I was working for the United States. We came into the Oklahoma territory, and then as we got everything situated in Oklahoma, I decided to go out on my own as a young entrepreneur. Which means I wanted my own business, I wanted my own land, I wanted my own stores. I wanted to start a church. I wanted to start, like you said, jewelry stores, rooming houses. So I had this dream when I came and built this place called Greenwood. I'm from Greenwood, Mississippi. So I decided to name it Greenwood Avenue. But the smartest thing I did was I built it by the railroad tracks. You see, we didn't have Amazon. You see, so you had to think, how can you get your goods in? The railroad tracks. So we built it right down here on Greenwood. We kept on doing it, and we became very prosperous. And Greenwood prospered and prospered. And we continue and continue. I don't feel no waste time. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me this road would be easy. Oh, I come too far for him to leave me.
J.B. Stratford arrived in Tulsa in 1899. He believed that black people had a better chance of economic progress if they pooled their resources, worked together, and supported each other's businesses. He bought large tracts of real estate in the northeastern part of Tulsa, which he had subdivided and sold exclusively to other African Americans. Stratford built the Stratford Hotel on Greenwood. It was said to be the largest black-owned hotel in the United States. Another person on Greenwood is Mr. Simon Berry. Black Wall Street was built on the backs of men like Simon Berry, a pilot and a businessman. He started the city's first transportation system, Berry's Jitney service. Principal James, can you tell us something about a jitney service?
A jitney was the original Uber. Jitney service, obviously we did not have computers back in those days, so you couldn't call on a jitney, type it in and schedule it for such a date and time. So what jitney drivers did was they would camp out at certain places throughout the district. If you needed a ride to the grocery store, you had a jitney man. If you needed a ride to the bar, you had a jitney man. If you needed a ride wherever, the jitney man was there at a price that both you and he or she settled at that particular time.
Simon Berry had buses and chartered airplanes. Berry became one of the largest employers of colored folk, and after the sale of his business, progress. Now let's talk about Deputy Barney S. Cleaver, the first black deputy sheriff on patrol Greenwood, the first African-American policeman in Tulsa. He was born in New Bern, Virginia in 1865. While living in Colgate, Oklahoma, he was appointed Special Deputy U.S. Marshal under Captain Grady. He moved to Tulsa in 1907 and was first appointed City Patrolman and later became Deputy Sheriff under Sheriff Cooley. Deputy Sheriff Cleaver and his wife, Myrna, lived at 508 North Greenwood in 1914 and owned interest in the building across the street from their home, the Cleveland Charity Building. Class, welcome, Deputy Cleaver.
I'm Deputy Cleaver, patrol the streets, so no putting gum on the floors or on the ground. Try to keep the community clean here on Greenwood. Came from Virginia.
Okay, he's crazy.
Coal mines. They made me deputy eventually after being a federal agent employee for the federal government. And kind of sad today because I remember back when not only did they burn down my house, but we was trying to save that young man in jail, Dick Rowland. The mob wanted to lynch him up and take good care of him. And I had to stop. The black men were coming. They wanted to protect him. And I still was in the middle of these two fascists. Group of people that were at odds. And why? We were living a good life, good job, trying to protect this community. And it was a sad time. And so, looking back over the years, they asked me to tell my story and hear it, and I told them. They even offered to whoop me. I'm stopping everybody from getting in trouble. I don't know if you heard about Wall Street, like Greenwood back then, but do you have any questions for the old deputy? How many of you remember that time? You heard about it on the news, read about it, teacher told you about it. Greenwood was a fine little Africa. I just really hope it can get better. Thank you.
Class, do you know who the richest black woman of Greenwood was? Her name is Miss California Taylor. California lived in Welcome, Oklahoma, better known as Alsuna, later becoming part of Tulsa. She was married to a banker, and her father owned the largest cotton gin west of the Mississippi River. When California shopped, she would take a cruise to Paris every 3 months. She would have all her clothes made. She also owned her own train car to travel to New York City to shop. Class, meet Miss California.
Hi everybody, my name is California Taylor, and my dad owns the only cotton gin on this side of the Mississippi, and my husband is a banker for Black Wall Street. And every time I want to shop, I hop on a boat every 3 months, and have my clothes made personally to fit in Paris, France. And when I come back and I want to shop, I get on my own train cart and go to New York and shop. And my daddy and my husband bought that train car for me so I wouldn't have to ride second class. And when I want to eat, I want to eat the best food, and where I go to get that is at Cleora Taylor's restaurant on Black Wall Street. That way I have the greatest food and I rub elbows with the rich and famous. And so, does anybody have any questions? No? Oh my God. I guess I'm that good and I told you everything you needed to know. Well, I will sit down next to my cousin, Deputy Barney Cleaver.
This was Greenwood at its finest. There was wealth, there was prosperity, there was a sense of the possibility of what could be. Less than a half a century after the end of slavery, these people took it upon themselves to create a very, what at that time would have been a very modern and prosperous area of town. As I said, it was called the Black Wall Street, rivaling Wall Street itself in New York City. So what happened? Anybody got any ideas? We got a couple of guests here that we're going to tell us a little bit more about what actually happened. Class, please stand as I introduce to you Ms. Leisa Stallworth, the last surviving person from the 1921 riots. This is
I'm so good to see all of you here today. I lived a long time. I'm 106 years old. See my picture right there? Miss Leslie. That's what they call me, Miss Leslie. Principal, do you have some more information for them?
Ms. Benefield, we had a grocery store. She had a grocery store down there in Greenwood. She was a very well-known person in the area. Not just in Greenwood, but throughout Tulsa town itself. Remember again, back in 1906, Oklahoma was not yet a state. It was a territory. It did not, and for those of you who don't quite understand that, we have 50 states in the nation right now. Half of the states were not states during that time. This was a wild, wild land down there. I'm pretty sure you probably heard the term the Wild, Wild West. We were part of it. Ms. Benningfield is one of those trailblazers who made that place what it is today.
Can you tell them about one of the founders?
Along with Mr. O.W. Curtis, who, as you've already met, he was a straight. He would have been ranked up there at the time for his wealth and prosperity with people such as J. Paul Getty, the Rockefellers. He was actually the Rockefeller of our time at that time there, including in starting the Greenwood area. He had a piece of every business there because he was the landlord. And then he built a church On top of that, because he was a God-fearing man, and he wanted to spread that information and that religion throughout the community.
Let me tell you what happened to Greenwood. Are you listening?
Yes.
I was back there. You heard a lot about it? You heard about how it burned?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to introduce you to one of the founders of Tulsa. They used to call it Tulsa Town. Not Tulsa, but Tulsa Town. His name is Tate Brady. He was the richest man in Oklahoma. Some people said he ran Oklahoma. He had a house on the hill over there in Denver. But let me tell you, Mr. Brady was a good man. He would hire a lot of colored folks. You know what colored is?
No, ma'am.
Well, let me tell you what colored was. During my time, African Americans were known as colored and Negro. Have you heard those words?
Yes.
So when I say those words, you will know what I'm talking about. So he had a lot of colored folks down at his hotel. He had the Hotel Brady. It was the first hotel in Oklahoma to have baths. You know what a bath is? Where you get and put your foot in there.
Yes. Yes.
He had a bath. So Brady, he would hire all types of people, but he hired colored folks. And he would say to young colored boys, now, if you work for me, you're going to learn something. So you got to be good. And Mabel Little, she was a survivor like me. She passed away about 20 years ago. She wrote in her book that Tate Brady was a good man. Mr. Brady, come on out. Meet everybody.
Hello, class. So good to see you all here. I've got a lot to tell you. Being quite a man. So good to see you, Miss Leisa.
Good to see you, Mr. Brady.
Oh, what a lady. If you only knew the life of Miss Leisa. So, class, it's so good to see you. What would you like to talk about?
Greenwood.
1921.
Yes.
Oh, we've got a lot to tell you about. I want to sit down and let them tell you more about it.
Come sit over here next to me. Now, Mr. Tate Brady, many of you probably heard that they said he was responsible for what happened in Greenwood. He was a rich man. He was worth $60 million. It took 7 of us to clean his house. So do you know what happened? Well, I'm going to tell you, but first I'm going to relive Tuesday, May 31st, 1921. My mother, she worked for Mr. Brady. And me, I was a young'un, and I followed Mama up the hill off our house. We live off of Elgin to work with him. I went up there to work with my mother. We was carrying just loads of clothes clothes that we had to iron and iron those clothes. So about 3 o'clock, we saw smoke all over. Smoke all over the place, and I was just 6 years old. Can you imagine 6 years old and you seeing all this smoke outside? And my mother, she says, we got to get home. Something is going on. Something is happening on Greenwood. And I never seen. Have you ever seen your mother when she gets up and she can't hardly make it? We got to get home, child. We got to get home. So we got our bags, and we didn't know what had happened downtown. Did you know that they say the reason why Greenwood was burned was because a young colored boy, he got on the elevator. You been riding on the elevator?
Yes. Yes.
And there was a lady who was white, and he accidentally stumbled on her. And she hollered, "Ah! Ah!" And you know, back then, you couldn't do that. They would accuse you, what you doing in there? What you doing to that lady? And they arrested him. We didn't know that the white people and the colored folks had come with their guns down to the courthouse. So we was going down from Denver to our house on Elgin, and the smoke was just rising all over the place. By the time we got there, the house was on fire. The house was on fire. And my mother, she hollered out to my papa. He was in the house. Elsie! Elsie! He burned up. My mother was never the same after that. He would just rock and rock and rock, and she would talk to herself. She would see things.
Well, class, that happened a long time ago, and I'm an old man now. For 88 years, I've been wandering the streets of Greenwood since all that terrible happened. And I just trying to find some way for all the bad that I did others, that we could find forgiveness and redemption for all that we did to this incredible town.
Mr. Brady, why you been just wandering down Greenwood?
Miss Leslie, you know, you're speaking the truth. As I think back about it, I just couldn't understand how Negroes could have so much money.
So you got greedy? Do you know somebody been greedy?
Yes.
Have you ever seen one of your little sisters or brother and you give them a bag of chips and they take all the chips?
Yes.
That's what happened with him. He had all the money in the world, but you know what the Bible says when you get to looking at what your neighbor got and wishing you had that. Sometimes you'll do wrong. Have you ever did wrong when you look it over there?
No.
That's good. Because that's what Mr. Brandon did. He just got greedy. Mr. Brandon, why didn't you like California Taylor?
Well, this lady over here, she started putting bad ideas in Cleola's mind not to work with me and my missus.
Well,
I tell you, I was so upset with you that I was thinking about burning down your cotton gin to the ground.
it's pitiful. Because you wanted Cleola Butler. She was a famous cook back then. She could cook like nobody. People would come from all around the country to eat her biscuits. You like biscuits?
Yes.
Well, she wanted to go in business for herself instead of work in your kitchen. Well, Brady, Mr. Brady, why didn't you like O.W. Gurley?
Well, actually, this man, O.W., he was a good man.
He was a good man.
He was a good Christian man. But he just had too much money. He was a founder of Greenwood. And I was one of the founders of Tulsa Town. But I couldn't stand the chance that Greenwood would get bigger than Tulsa Town. Now, Simon Berry has a different story because Simon was arrogant. He was flying his airplanes around. And he did some things with a lot of women that I have to confess to y'all, I did the same thing, but it was terrible what my wife would say to me. Things I did back then with all these women. But he did that too. But he's not like a good man, O.W. Gurley.
O.W. was the founder of Greenwood. He made a way for all the colored folks so they could have something. And Simon Berry, you see the buses on the street today?
Yes.
He was responsible for transportation in Tulsa. And also, he owned an airplane. How many colored folks you know about airplanes? Back then in 1924, he was flying airplane. And Mr. Brady, you had all the money in the world. I mean, it took 7 of us to clean your house.
And I tell you, I just wasn't myself, Miss Leslie.
No.
The good book, and I've been reading it a lot lately, and I found this part in the Bible that unfortunately describes what was going on in my life and many other guys who were involved with the Ku Klux Klan. So I'm going to read to you what the good book says that describes what we did. And I'm so ashamed. It says in the book of Romans, chapter 1, starting at verse 28. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do things which are not seemly, like being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy. That really got me. Murder, strife, deceit, malignity, backbiters, haters of God, people who are so proud, Ku Klux Klan, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to their parents, but without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection. So the good book, it really caused me to really search my heart.
That's a good thing, Mr. Brady. That's a good thing. Because if you don't search your heart, then you can't go nowhere. What you did was wrong.
roaming the streets, just trying to find some peace about all the bad things that not only I did, but other men.
Have you asked God for forgiveness?
Oh, yeah, I have. But I need to ask a lot of people to pray for me.
Well, you need to ask everybody up here for forgiveness.
Oh. Well, Miss Leslie. Will you forgive me?
You did a lot of wrong, but I forgive you.
Oh. Oh, thank you.
I forgive you.
Thank you. Oh, I don't deserve it. Thank you. I haven't been needing that for so long.
And you need to ask
Yeah.
California.
And I know I was threatening to burn down your cotton gin, and I said a lot of bad things about you. But I have a repentant heart, and I'd just like to ask you to forgive me. Oh, God bless you. Only God could give you the heart to do that.
And O.W., you need to ask him. He started Greenwood. You need to ask him for forgiveness.
Oh, W. Hey, you. Oh, man. Oh. Oh. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Brady, I want you to ask all these young ones here for forgiveness.
Well, you've been hearing today a lot about me, about what's going on in these incredible people's lives and the good things that have happened. And I know right now, the newspapers in Tulsa and media all over the world are looking at Tulsa because we're just about to come to that day when she talked about coming
May
down.
31st, coming down that hill.
So, only God can give you the willingness to forgive me and all the other white folks that did so much wrong. Because Tulsa town needs healing. We need to do that today. That happened 100 years ago.
But you know, Mr. Brady, if y'all don't start forgiving, we can't go forward. Have you thought about that? If you got hate in your heart, because many of you may have heard, oh, look at what the white folks did to Greenwood. But if you keep that heart just with bitterness against the white folks, and you make your white friends feel bad because they didn't have nothing to do with it. Greenwood is not the brick and mortar that you see down there. Greenwood is in your heart, in your mind. You are the dreams of Greenwood. So what are you going to do to keep that dream alive? You're going to be good. Can you get your A's in that class instead of getting some D or F? You are the dream of Greenwood, so if you want to lift up Greenwood, it's not in the building you see down there, it's in you. The next time your mother asks you to take the trash out, to get off away from the TV and get your mind going, say to yourself, I am the dream of Greenwood. That Greenwood is not going to come back over there. It's going going to come back in me. I'm going to be an airplane aviator. I'm going to be just as rich as old W. Gurley. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to make something of myself. Because I'm the dream and I'm not going to have no hate for the white man. Because this is what they want you to do. But what does the Bible say? What does your Bible say about loving one another? Have you done wrong before? And you had to go and ask somebody for forgiveness? You have?
Yes.
That's the same forgiveness you need to have in your heart about Greenwood. It was wrong. Principal,
Yes, ma'am.
I think you need to, you and Mr. Tenetia take your class over. It's past my bedtime.
Thank you, Ms. Leslie. You know, folks, some people said Mr. Tate Brady started that whole mess down in Greenwood. Some people say that had it not been for him, that area of our city would be as prosperous as, say, Midtown or South Tulsa. Don't know. You just heard the ghosts of the people who were there forgive Mr. Brady for his part in that whole massacre and that unpleasantness down there. Can y'all forgive me?
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't feel no waste time. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me this road would be easy. Come too far for him to leave.